Welcome to the Baltes podcast. My name is Mack Baltes, sports journalist and analyst with USA Today. And today I'm joined by the Baltes rotation, Connor, Eli. I appreciate you guys joining me.
Yeah, it's good.
Of course.
So let's get right into it. Today we're talking offseason NBA. And we're starting off with some recent NBA trades. It's been a crazy offseason period. And we're going to start off with the first trade, Julius Randle. How do we feel?
I kind of liked it. I like that Julius Randle getting his own team a little bit. I know that MPJ is there, and he's kind of a shot chucker in a way. But Julius Randle going to the Brooklyn Nets gives the Nets a little bit of an identity. I think that's kind of a cool, different look for the NBA. So I'm pretty excited for it.
I think the fit could work. I think Julius is kind of needs to have possession of the ball, can distribute it pretty well for a forward, and like you said, MPJ kind of gets some shots up, so could be a good fit.
Yeah, I don't. For me, this doesn't move the needle for Brooklyn by any means. It gets them the star that they're looking for, but when I saw this trade, I was more concerned with the overall what the NBA's turned into with the new CBA. We're talking about Julius Randle and a first-round pick just to move down. They traded Julius Randle and a first-round pick to move down 5 spots, and then they threw Nick Claxton to Chicago, and Chicago didn't have to give anything up. So it's weird how the new CBA, it feels like, in my opinion, it feels like there's 10 to 12 teams that are actually trying to win, and then the other 18 to 20 teams are just like the pawns being used by the teams that actually want to win.
Right. I also wonder how much the bigger market franchises come into play with that kind of stuff, because like you said, it's kind of like 10 to 12 teams and then there's a drop-off.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if major markets are going to benefit even more than they did beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
More about the Julius trade, I feel like I kind of like the Claxton side of it a little bit more than people want to talk about. Like, I think this Bulls team, especially with going and getting Caleb Wilson in the draft, like, it's kind of got a little bit of an identity with Buzelis, and now you got Giddy running the point too. It's like, it's kind of a team that could give some fits. I think that, Claxton will kind of fit as like a garbage eater.
You look at how they started their year last year. If they kept that up, who knows?
That's what I'm saying.
I'm like what we saw from Mattis last year. Buzelis was great, and again, this is a team after the trade deadline took on Colin Sexton, took on Anthony Simons. Their biggest players were Gershon Yabusele and Nick Richards, and now you added a 4 in Wilson, and then now you added Claxton for the price of just paying him to go to work.
Yeah, you get boards.
That's a huge upgrade. But moving on to the LaMelo Ball trade, this is one that shocked many, and I'll start off by saying I was shocked about the blowback, if you will, the rest of the league gave the Minnesota Timberwolves. And the reason I say that is they gave up 1 first-round pick, obviously Naz Reid, who I believe is under contract for 4 more seasons on his deal with Charlotte now, and then I believe a second-round pick in the 3 first-round pick swaps. I believe the swaps are from 2028 to 2030. And I look at this, and it's the first time, or the quickest in NBA history, that 2 top 3 picks from a same draft, it's the quickest that they're playing together since that draft. And when you look at that last pick swap in 2030, which is 4 years from now, LaMelo Ball and Anthony Edwards, the top duo for Minnesota, will not even be 29 years old yet if we fast forward ahead. So I understand that it is a lot to give up, and that 2033 first rounder could be, the biggest haul of the deal. But if we talk about those pick swaps, which are the main thing, I would be shocked if if more than one of those conveys to Charlotte, because at the end of the day, the pick swaps are only as valuable to Charlotte if they can use them. And if Charlotte's going to have a better pick than Minnesota all these years, they're not using the swap. So I understand. Like I'm not predicting that Minnesota wins the title next year, not at all. But
They're going to be better than Charlotte, though.
Exactly, and that's how it appears to look. And then also with that 2033 first rounder, it's obviously there's a better chance of Minnesota not being great at that time. I will say to Charlotte's credit, with the new tanking rules, technically if you make the playoffs and lose in the first round, that can turn into a lottery pick.
Right.
So I understand that, but this is a gamble for Charlotte, if you ask me. I also understand LaMelo Ball's injury concerns as well. I read something that, when it comes to minutes and points, about the minutes he's played through this point in his career and the points he scored, he's up there with Zion and Ja. And that's because these are players that have scored a lot but have barely played due to injury.
Yeah, that's fair. I also wonder how him playing with Ant and not kind of having free reign of how he's playing this game is going to impact, and if he's going to be mature enough to settle into that role well, because it's not going to be AAU ball in Minnesota like it was in Charlotte for a couple of years there.
No.
So I'm curious to see how that pans out.
Yeah, I think this is a huge gamble by the Hornets, and I hated it at first, and now after kind of like digesting it over the weekend and kind of looking at everything and feeling it out more, I start to kind of like it a little bit more, and not to down LaMelo Ball, because he had an amazing season last year, and a season that every Hornets fan was truly looking for a really long time. But the reality of it is the guy doesn't really play a lot, and as a business owner, as the Hornets have, you got to think the long-term life of all this. And so I think, yes, it's a gamble, but when you gamble like that, you got to gamble in the right spots, and I think that this could potentially be one of those right spots.
I don't think Charlotte's foolish for this deal. I don't think they're in a bad spot because of this deal. I do think there's a better chance that they don't get the best end of this deal, other than what people are saying. But this still puts Charlotte in a good spot. But this deal had me questioning what the team wants to do in the future. And we got a little bit of an answer in that with the next deal we're going to talk about, which is the Miles Bridges trade. And this was Miles Bridges, I believe, in a second-round pick, in addition to a first-round pick going to the Suns for a 2033 first-rounder, as well as Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal. And for the Hornets, if you're a Hornets fan, you should love this deal, because I believe together Allen and O'Neal would be better on court than Bridges.
I think O'Neal's going to be in a retirement home by the time that 2033 pick comes around.
Most likely.
He's got to be 35 plus.
No, I don't think so. I think he's a little younger than that.
Is he?
33.
33. Right. Fair enough.
But so, if we're looking at this from the Hornets' perspective, O'Neal and Grayson Allen both had career highs in points last year. I believe Grayson Allen had a career high in steals as well. Luke Kennard was a guy who's a free agent who would be a sharpshooter for the Hornets. They just got Allen, who is scores at will a bit better than Kennard and can create his own shot better. But then the 2033 first round pick, and there's a lot said about the 2033 pick from Minnesota. This one, we talked a little bit about it a little bit off camera. I feel like this Phoenix 2033 is going to be better than that Minnesota 2033. And another thing to say about that 2029 pick going to Phoenix. That's the least favorable of 4 first round picks. So that's going to be a poor pick that Phoenix is getting. But if you look at the Suns, I'm not really sure what they're doing, in a sense of, they extended Gillespie, they extended Mark Williams, and now they're bringing in Miles Bridges. But, with D-Book, Jalen Green, and Miles Bridges and Mark Williams, without now the great shooting of Allen and the solid defense of O'Neal, it's just like,
yeah. And how much can you get from Dylan Brooks? This team is just so odd.
Is this?
It's just a troll.
It's so weird. And how much much is Miles actually going to give you? Like, yeah, he might give you a good 2027, but like beyond that, like how much is Miles going to actually give you? And that's my issue kind of with it.
Yeah, and to bounce off that, I think with all those guys that you just listed on Phoenix, I don't know how big of a piece he's going to be for them, because I mean he's a 4 that can kind of play the 3. He averaged like 17 points and I think like 6 boards last year. I feel like you probably want a couple more boards out of your 4, ideally, and that was in Charlotte. I just don't know how he's going to fit over there.
And just more of a defensive presence. Like, he's just not going to bring much of a defensive presence at all either. And so that, like, along with Jalen Green, I mean, yeah, you got Dylan Brooks. He's a great defender, but D-Book's not a great defender. Like, this team is just going to be like Swiss cheese. Like, it's not going to be great.
Yeah, I think in a tightly packed Western Conference, they have to look within and say, what are we really trying to achieve? But I also think, we talked about the Hornets and the move of LaMelo, but I think the move for trading away Bridges contradicts what they're doing in the LaMelo deal. Not because, like, once they moved Ball, I thought Bridges was going to be the next move, but it's what they got back for Bridges that kind of contradicts that first move, because it's like Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal are great win-now players for their roster. So I felt like after the Ball deal, they were trying to push their window of contention backwards. Yeah. And now it's like they got win-now guys. So I'm not really sure what they're trying to do, but you can't help but think, what does a Hornets team look like next year with LaMelo Ball on it, plus this trade? LaMelo Ball, they didn't trade him, and then you have O'Neal and Allen. All of a sudden, they look pretty good. And let's be clear, we talked about comparing Ball to the likes of Morant and Williamson, but they have never been as successful as that Hornets team was the second half of last year. Right. Like we are talking, the Hornets were a top 5 team in the league in the second half of the year. And then, like, we're not talking top 5 team in the East. We're talking top 5 team in the league.
They were being compared to the Warriors, like good Warriors teams of the late 2010s.
Because of the three-point shooting, exactly. They finished first in the league in three-pointers made and third in three-point percentage. And I think that's why I think this move can be viewed as questionable, because you can say, yeah, I don't mind Charlotte, building for the future with some of those picks, but it's like, Miller will be on the final year of his rookie deal this year, and then Khan still has 3 more years till he gets an extension. So it's not like you had to move Ball's money away. I still think they could have kind of gone best of both worlds, where they still tried to prepare for the future while also keeping Ball and riding on that momentum. But also, just looking at them from a draft perspective, I think it's interesting because originally when I saw that return with Hannes Steinbach as the 14th pick, and then Christian Anderson as the 18th pick, I wasn't blown away. I said to myself, like, because they were involved in trade talks with that 18 pick to either move it for Claxton, move it for Sabonis in a trade with Bridges as well. I'm like, could they have gotten a serviceable center there and then used 14 on somebody with a little bit higher upside? So we'll have to see. Obviously, the selection of Anderson, who's a point guard, is a precursor to the LaMelo trade. His fit is so much different now that LaMelo is gone.
Yeah, I like that pick. I don't know much about Steinbach, honestly.
That's fair.
That kind of caught me off guard. But Anderson, he's nice. He's a bucket.
Yeah, Steinbach, I think he'll bring some really good rebounding. Down the road, maybe a little bit. You don't want to expect too much from him now, but especially if we were to have still had Miles, I think he would have been a nice supplemental guy as someone that could come in, play 15 minutes, and just eat glass the entire time. Now without Bridges, does that kind of increase his role a little bit? We don't really know, but we'll see.
They got Kalkbrenner.
Yes. Steinbach averaged over 14 rebounds a game in college, was a really, really good rebounder, but there's so many questions about the defense and the defensive versatility, being able to move on the perimeter. And that was something we saw a little bit with Kalkbrenner too, is like just your Luke Cornett types. It's tough for them to defend on the perimeter. And that's why like players like Wemby or Porzingis are a little bit different, because they're more agile, mobile, and they can jump high and they can block shots. definitely interesting for sure. I never liked the the Christian Anderson fit at all at the beginning when I saw the pick, because Christian Anderson shot 40% from three in college, and which is phenomenal. But at some point, when you lead the league in 3-pointers made and 3-point percentages, like how much 3-point shooting do you need? Like, I think they need more defense. I think they need a defensive wing, and I think Dalen Swain could have been their guy out of Texas. He was comped to Herb Jones in the draft. He ended up going to Chicago. He doesn't shoot the three well, but they have so many perimeter shooters that I thought maybe it could have worked out. And then moving on with another trade, Giannis obviously landing in Miami. And I'll let you guys have the first word on this one. This is just, yeah. I mean, well,
I think Miami needs to do something else. I mean, it just feels like their bench is so mid. I mean, him, Bam, Wiggins. Davion Mitchell isn't a good starting point guard in my opinion. He's great defensively, but outside
Absolutely.
that, you don't get much out of him. I don't know what Norm Powell's contract situation is.
free agent.
Right. So depending on whether they sign him or not, he was a decent scoring option from a guard perspective for the first half of the last year. And then I don't know, did he get hurt? Was that his deal?
A little bit.
But yeah, they got some more moves to make, I think, if they're going to be a true contender or anything.
Yeah, Miami can't be done right now. I mean, I think, yeah, it's great you got Giannis, but like, you need a little bit more, and the Heat just sent off just about everything they possibly could to get Giannis. So it's almost like this weird, like, in my opinion, it's a little bit of a weird rebuild situation, but like they have to go now because they have Giannis. And then the other side of it is, how do Giannis and Bam fit? Two scoring dominant guys, but Giannis, yeah, he can grab you boards, he can dish a couple assists here and there. But how much of that is actually winning basketball when you have Bam and Giannis on the same team? I don't really know. And like we were talking about earlier, like the fact that they don't have a true number one point guard, like that worries me a lot about this team. And like, this Miami Heat franchise has always been good at just grinding out 43, 47, 49 wins, whatever, and figuring out a way to become competitive. But what does that look like with Giannis on this team now? What is he? What is it? 52 wins now? Like, I just don't know how much better this team gets just with Giannis.
That's fair. And I think since the play-in started, they've been in the play-in more than any other team.
Oh, yeah.
I think almost every time.
Now I'll say this. I think this is a win for Miami. I think this trade is a win for Miami, and I'll tell you why. The why is, in an era where we're talking about like Gobert going for 4 first-rounders, Desmond Bane going for 4 first-rounders, for them to get Giannis, who wants to re-sign, that's huge. And then also, you have to look at the opportunity cost of who else was available to get. And the answer was nobody, So, and then if you add into the situation that, that Tyler Hero was at odds in his contract situation, likely not going to sign long-term, and then the, underlying issues between Kel'el Ware and Coach Spoelstra, who I think Kel'el Ware is a great player, but all of a sudden, you're looking at two of the main players going back to Milwaukee are guys that might not have had a future. And then, Yaku Chonis, maybe a future starting point guard in the league. And I'm a big Jaime Jaquez guy. I think he's a glue guy. I think he's like, I think you could maybe say a poor man's Josh Hart, just a guy who does everything. I think he's a good player. But then the 3 first-round picks, and one of them a pick swap as well, and then a second-round pick, it costs draft capital to get stars. So I think it was good in a sense of they got the star, they got who they wanted. But yeah, you guys mentioned they're still far away from contention. I don't know if this is a top 5 seed in the East. I don't know if this is even a top 4 seed. I think they could very well be in a play-in spot again because the free agent market is so thin, and Davion Mitchell's their best guard. He will be a free agent after this year. They will be constrained based on what Andrew Wiggins does because he has a player option first. But if you look at the free agents, the best free agent guards we're talking about are Colin Sexton and like Anthony Simons. And it's like, if they can't do well in free agency, we're talking about Giannis' first year in Miami being a wash.
I think Colin Sexton could make sense.
I was going to say, I think that could actually be a pretty good ad.
Yeah.
Just somebody that can literally just control the pace, and then also add on defense. But yeah, I mean, I think this is such an interesting trade because you can look at it from so many different angles. And I know the Bucks are not going to be good, but I don't really hate it from the Bucks side either. Like, you had to get off Giannis.
Absolutely.
He wanted to leave, and you just have to get rid of that kind of energy in the locker room.
Yeah.
And then you bring a guy in like Tyler Hero, who is from Wisconsin and is probably just going to play with some pride. Kel'el Ware, and I was pretty high on him in Miami. I thought he kind of had a future there. And like you said with Jaime Jaquez, he's just a guy that's going to give you pretty much everything. And so as much as they're not going to be a good competitive team, I think, it at least kind of gives them somewhat of a building point.
The unfortunate thing for them is that in this trade, they didn't get their franchise future, right? I don't think any of those guys are the future stars, but with the picks, you have a chance to earn them or draft them, and then you just get off of Giannis, you get off of the contract. Going back to Miami a little bit, you guys mentioned Sexton. I actually think they're going to be good defensively. I think they're positionless in a sense. They can switch. They've got a lot of length. Obviously, adding Portis as well, and Davion Mitchell's a good defender. I think they should go after shooters. I think as much shooting as you can get, whether that's Kennard, whether that is Simons. Like I said, Simons torched them for Boston, torched the Heat as a member of Boston this year. I'm sure they would be interested in him, and then I'm sure that Chris Middleton will probably join his good friend Giannis in Miami. I know he's a free agent. I think that would be just a fit that makes too much sense. But definitely needs some scoring, especially if Norman Powell leaves.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not concerned about the defensive side of the ball for that team at all.
No.
They even have Bobby Portis coming off the bench. He's decent defensively as a forward, too. I'm just more to what he was saying, just like controlling the pace, and then, like you're saying, shooting the rock, second it. Yeah.
And then depth in general. Like, when you get past, like, the Portis and, that's like, after that, it's like, they're pretty much one pretty bad injury away to one of their stars, away from being like a 30-win team.
Yeah, you don't want
so that's what
30-plus minutes.
Exactly. And so that's what worries me a little bit more about the Heat, too, is where they could just really fall into a pretty bad injury trap. And, Giannis hasn't been the most,
the healthiest guy.
Yeah, exactly. So
Of late, for sure.
late, yeah.
And then moving on to the trade just broke today. Ja Morant to the Portland Trailblazers for no picks. Jeremy Grant and Chris Murray. Grant has 2 years remaining on his deal, one this year and then a player option. And then Chris Murray has 1 year remaining on his rookie deal and then will be a restricted free agent after. And then looking at it from the Portland side, Ja has two years left on his deal. And I'll be honest with you guys, I think this is kind of a win-win. And the reason I say that is, the Trailblazers get a star caliber player for no draft capital. And the Grizzlies, they get off of Ja, and then they get somebody to add to their front court, two players to add to their front court relatively cheap. I don't think Grant's going to be a player, who's going to be with them for necessarily a while, but then, Chris Murray, they have a chance to extend him. And, after, unfortunately, the passing of Brandon Clark and then obviously the JJJ trade, the Jaren Jackson Jr. trade, their front court was depleted. Obviously, they have Zach Edey and just drafted Cam Boozer, but they didn't have a whole lot in their front court. So I think it's a solid move, but there are questions to be asked about this Portland team now because, we're talking about 3 starting point guards. So
a lot of guards.
There's definitely, this is probably the precursor to some more moves, but if you look at their defense, they were a great defensive team last year. I believe Matisse Thybulle's a free agent, but Tamani Kamara, Shaedon Sharp, these are guys that are athletic on the wing, and then Donovan Clingan is just all around just a good center. So they're not out of front court players, but maybe need to move one of those guards for a front court player. And then one of the most intriguing prospects in my mind, who was playing a lot for the G League last year, Jan Hansen. I mean, this was a guy who was highly touted. I mean, he shot up into the lottery out of nowhere
He's a plant.
last year, and just he can block shots, he can hit threes, and he can dish the rock too. So definitely interesting.
He came out of nowhere for me for that draft. I did not know about him.
No, me neither. I like this trade too, man. I think the biggest thing is like the draft capital. Like, dude, you didn't give up anything for John Morant. I know he's had some issues in the past, but to get a guy like that, like, you know, be able to take a swing. And yeah, they got to figure out their point guard situation, but you know, this sends Jeremy Grant and Chris over to Memphis, and Memphis is kind of building something too. You know, it's also, I had this in my notes, and this is a little bit random, but it's Memphis related. What does this mean for Aldama? You know, I'm a big Santi Aldama guy for some reason. I don't know where I got that from. But he produces though. Like, he's a great shooter. He's got size.
Absolutely.
And now this kind of pushes him a little bit to more of a bench role, I think, you know, with Grant coming in. So I think this is an interesting point for the Memphis Grizzlies, where they're getting off of Ja, a guy that's kind of poisoned them the last couple of years. And now they can kind of rebuild, start fresh, and you know, give a whole new look a try. And so I'm excited for the Grizzlies too. And, you know, we haven't even mentioned Boozer yet, and so it's a whole new addition that we don't have no idea about, but he could be someone that really plays great.
True. I just I guess going back to what you were saying, Mac, the guard situation, I wonder how that's going to pan out, because I do think it's a precursor to something else. Do I think one of these guards fits well in Miami? I wouldn't say so, because of the lack of pure shooting
Offense.
Well, I mean, we know how Giannis feels about Drew Holiday. Apparently,
They were falling out.
no, he loved it.
Oh,
He
yeah,
loves playing. He loves playing with Drew Holiday. It was reported that part of the reason Giannis became unhappy with the Bucks was because they included Holiday in the Dame deal, and although, you know, he doesn't add that shooting we're looking for, certainly has the defense, but also we didn't even mention Scoot Henderson as well. I think of those players that we mentioned, I think Portland should move forward with Ja and Dame, because it's a bit of a yin and yang, right? Because you have the shooting of Dame, you have the driving and attacking of Ja. I think that would work quite well. Scoot Henderson played some good basketball last season, especially for a little bit of a stretch, started to look like a top 3 pick, because he hasn't.
He had an absurd playoff game too. Like, he dropped, it was like a 30-plus point game or something. It looked like, yeah.
But going back to Memphis, and you mentioned Aldama moving to the bench, I believe he's mostly a bench guy. He I don't know if he prefers, but he plays the majority of his games off the bench. Somebody that can stretch the floor. But I was looking at the Grizzlies roster today, and there's a lot to like. Yeah. There are a lot of high upside guys. I mean, we're talking about G.G. Jackson. We're talking about Jalen Wells is another one. And then obviously Cedric Coward, who I believe was the 14th overall pick and finished 5th in Rookie of the Year voting. I mean, that's a great return. Obviously, they've got Ty Jerome, who's shown. And then even Cam Spencer had a pretty solid year. So they've got some young guys that can play. And then as far as Boozer is concerned, I wrote an article with USA Today about the 3 best steals from the draft. And I had to include Cameron Boozer. And even though it's crazy to say that, you know, a top 3 pick is a steal, but you have to look at the comparison. I mean, they were saying that if Boozer was in Flagg's class, that he would have been the number 1 overall over Flagg. So you're saying all of a sudden, with a 3 pick, I can get a Cooper Flagg type prospect or better. I mean, that's a huge win. And obviously it's a win for the Jazz as well and Peterson. But again, we're talking about from 3. Being able to get a potential number 1 pick in other drafts. I mean, look at the accolades with Boozer, and you know, I've written plenty of articles with USA Today about Duke. I write about Duke over there, and you know, we're talking about Wooden Award winner. AP Player of the Year. I mean, all of the accolades went down the line for Boozer in college basketball, and he advanced further in the tournament than both Debansa and Peterson as well. So, I mean, in other years, this would be a runaway number 1 overall pick. And, you know, for them to scoop him up at 3, I think was huge for sure.
I thought it would have been interesting if that Jaren Jackson situation never would have panned out where he went to Utah, because I think if that doesn't happen, then it makes too much sense for Boozer to go to Utah where his dad's fully involved in management.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would have been kind of cool to see.
It would have been cool as well, and it was really interesting because two of the top 4 teams were the longest tenured in Carlos Boozer's career, 6 years with the Jazz and then four years with the Bulls. So there was a chance, but also I can't help but think that Boozer definitely wants to carve out his own path. You know, he went to his dad's alma mater,
Of course.
and definitely I feel like he wants to make his own mark, maybe somewhere different. But it'll be interesting to see how he develops, and then also Caden Boozer, who decided to stay in school. I'm interested to see where he ranks as a prospect next year.
He had, one real bad turnover late in that tourney run.
He did against
Kind of put a
UConn.
damper on the whole year.
It did.
Yeah.
It did.
That had to be one of the bigger reasons why he was like, yeah, I'm going back to school. Yeah.
Which, as a semi-Duke hater, I was okay with that. We'll leave that alone for now.
And then doing a little segue to some coaching moves before we get into a fun buy or sell segment. The coaching moves, I mean, you know, obviously Masai Ujiri took over in Dallas, and you guys don't have to comment on all of these, but then they made the move to get Dusty May. Were supposedly interested in John Shire with that Cooper Flagg-Shire duo as well. Taylor Jenkins to Milwaukee, I think that's a great move. Jenkins was one of the top coaches on the cycle, on the circuit, and once, or in the coaching cycle, and then once Mike Malone went to UNC, I felt like he was the top one. And then another top one in my eyes was Tiago Splitter. I mean, and we'll talk about this Portland situation in a second, but how Portland did him was so dirty. I mean, we're talking about somebody who took an interim from Chauncey Billups right at the beginning
Probably
of the
one
season.
of the worst jobs you could ask for.
and they were amazing. They shocked. I believe they shocked Phoenix in that first play-in game, and then they took a game against San Antonio, which was impressive.
Right.
And what he got out of Denny was phenomenal. What Splitter got out of Denny. So I think, you know, Splitter going to Chicago with the guys we mentioned earlier like Buzelis, you know, Giddey, Wilson as well. I think that's going to be great. And then also the Pelicans getting Jamal Mosley, and I was just shocked to see that he was the first coach hired in this cycle. I mean, we're talking about, and I understand there were a lot of injuries in Orlando with Franz Wagner going down for a while, Paolo as well, and obviously they did do well in the playoffs last year. You know, being able to get by Detroit in Game 7, and then to move on to Cleveland, and they took them to 7 as well, I believe. But for Jamal Mosley to be the first coach hired, I was a little bit shocked. Your guys' thoughts?
I'd agree. I mean, also, weren't there rumors about him not having that locker room in order?
With Paolo.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, you can't handle your A1 star. I feel like, why are you going to be a bigger coaching interest than any of the others on the board?
Right. Yeah, and to a team which is a little bit younger, we're going to be, you know, dealing with some personalities that might not be as easy to mesh with. But yeah, I mean, Jamal Mosley, like I was looking at the notes earlier. I saw that Jamal. I mean, he's had some great seasons. Yes, he's been a great coach, and he might still be a great coach. But interesting timing, I think, is more the right way to go about it. There, like, why now? Why was he of these guys that we just listed off? Like, I mean, Tiago Splitter, that's my favorite one there. I mean, he's got championship pedigree from being a player. Like we just said, he brought this team that could have easily won 19 games, and we wouldn't have really batted an eye because, you know, they went through some shit. And so to go the Jamal Mosley route, it's like, what do you see here? But you never know there too. There could be some different connections within the organization where there's some, more positivity that can come from that. But yeah, I'm a little bit confused by it too.
And I think another thing is we looked at Mosley's record, and on his career it's 189 and 221, which is okay. But it was also part of the reason why it was a letdown was you give up 4 first-rounders for Desmond Bain, and then obviously they had that playoff success, but they were a play-in team. I mean, they were a play-in team, and if they could have seeded themselves better, maybe they would have had a chance to do a little, to be in a better spot in the playoffs. But then moving on to Micah Nori with the Blazers signing a very weird deal. It's a very Portland type of deal. He signed, I believe, a 3-year deal, but only the first year is guaranteed. I mean, this is a Portland type of deal, and this is what Tom Dundon has done ever since he took over the franchise. I mean, we're talking about a franchise that did not even travel their 2-way players to the playoffs as part of the team.
Yes.
We're talking about a owner that refused to give fans free T-shirts. And here's another thing. I don't a lot of this didn't get picked up by a lot of people, but there were reports that staff of the Portland Trailblazers were sitting in the lobby of hotels because Dundon wouldn't pay for late checkout anymore. So
I heard that, yeah.
so you had the masseuse, you had these team people just sitting waiting, because the first bus, two buses tend to go from the, when you're on the road from the hotel to the stadium, and you're waiting 2 or 3 hours, 4 hours in the lobby because you're waiting for the bus. And if I'm a star player in the league, I'm telling my agent I don't want to go to Portland. I mean, if this is how they're going to cut corners on the day to day, why would you want to get paid? What makes you think you're going to get paid? And from that front office, and obviously Dundon, has had success. The Hurricanes just won the Stanley Cup, so he had, he's had success, but also, he's ruffled a lot of feathers. Like when he took over the Hurricanes, he fired their longtime radio guy and just put play-by-play on the radio. I mean, we're talking about corners that other I haven't seen franchises cut corners like this, and obviously there was a lot to be said about the Nori deal, and Nori spoke about it himself and was saying, I didn't do this for the money, I did it because, but also, I did it because I want to have success, I want to see out this job, and I want to, try to build something with this team. But it was also the last coaching job available, so Nori didn't really have many options for a head coaching job, and unfortunately he had to take I'll say a disrespectful contract in a way.
I mean, I agree with everything you're saying, but at the same time, the Canes just win. So,
but basketball and hockey are just,
obviously,
right.
But the dude knows how to run a business, maybe.
Well, but running a business and running a successful you can run a business and make money, but your team might not be good, right? And you can run your team to profit and not necessarily contend. And again, like I said, I look at the moves that he made, and if I'm a star player, I'm like,
but are the Canes contending?
Well, yeah, but that point is moot here. But no, if I'm a Trailblazer, or if I'm anybody in the league who's involved in trade talks, I'm saying to myself, I don't know that I want to play for Portland, and it's how you treat people, and we've seen it a little bit with the Hornets and their change of culture. It's how you treat people. It's what you put in. It's what you put in that makes everybody around you want to buy in. So I think that's an interesting one. But then moving on to a little bit of buy or sell, playing a cool buy or sell game. Got a few topics here. I'll mention them, and then we'll all give a little piece on whether we buy or we sell. And first off, starting with the New York Knicks. I know, Knicks fans might not be happy to hear this one, but we're talking about them as a all-time champion or a great champion in recent history. And the reason I bring that up is because obviously they beat San Antonio, who a lot of people were saying, we're the better team, but then also they had the second longest win streak in a playoff run. I believe, just behind the Warriors, and then they finished with the highest point differential in NBA history in the playoffs, and then also the biggest comeback in NBA Finals history. So buy or sell the Knicks being an all-time championship team?
Selling. And I am biased, but I will say, big fan of that Spurs team. Extremely talented. Not a lot of playoff experience, regardless of the run that they had. Big fan of the guards they have. Wemby's obviously a beast. But I mean, you're talking about that comeback that the Knicks had. It doesn't happen if you have vets that have had that kind of playoff experience. Like, a collapse like that is just unheard of.
And something to mention on that quick, too, like the vets that they did have, like, other than Cornette and Barnes, who have that championship experience, both have won championships, Fox had little to no playoff experience with Sacramento.
Just that 1 year, basically, where they were lighting the beam.
Yeah.
Buy or sell?
I'm gonna zag from his take. I'm gonna buy it.
Oh, really? Wow.
I think as far as pure domination goes, this team, and I'm no Knicks fan, so this is no bias at all. As far as pure domination goes, this is one of the better playoff runs I've ever seen in honestly in sports. You can point at a lot of their opponents and be like, they weren't going against the 2018 Cavs, and they weren't going against the 2015 Warriors and all that stuff. But as far as beating teams by 15, 20 plus night after night, like, they just kept doing it. And then to go into a San Antonio series when they were, in my opinion, outgunned as far as talent goes. They stood their ground and they battled for every single minute, and I think that's really rare, especially in the league today. Comebacks are more prevalent nowadays, but 25-point comebacks, like these comebacks were like disturbing. They were insane.
Let me ask you: does this Knicks team beat the Thunder of last year or Boston of a couple of years ago in the finals?
I think it could be Boston.
Interesting. Your thoughts on that?
I think Boston beats them.
Okay. So and moving to my answer, I'm going to the store and I'm selling this one with ease. I think you mentioned the and I understand you can only play who you're up against. You can't pick and choose. But again, we're talking about the Atlanta Hawks in the first round, who that was their toughest series in the East until the conference finals. Then the 7 seed 76ers
got smacked
in round 2. I mean, that wasn't difficult at all. And then the Cavs, there's just too much dysfunction over there. As much talent as they have the same amount of dysfunction. So although it was a big streak, although they did they put themselves in all-time books, I don't think they would beat Boston. I definitely don't think they would beat Oklahoma City. And I think they are going to be a little bit overrated in the grand scheme of championship teams because of they're in the finals. They're in the history books, as we mentioned. But when it comes to talent, I think they're shorthanded against some of those other teams.
Do you think that's like maybe the New York effect of a championship in New York too? It gets a little overblown sometimes.
Oh, for sure. What I was going to get at was, like, you were talking about their dominance. Yeah, they dominated. Yeah, they had some crazy comebacks. But I feel like the whole competition aspect weighs more for me.
Okay. Yeah.
That's fair. Okay. So 2 sells, 1 buy there on the Knicks. Moving on to, I think we kind of already talked about this when we talked about the Heat trade, but buy or sell the Heat being contenders now with Giannis?
I'm selling until they get some good offensive productions out of the front court.
Yeah, I'm right there.
Backcourt.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm selling. I don't think this team gets past the second round.
Wow.
Ever. Like, in any years that Giannis and Bam are playing together, I don't think they get past the second round.
I think Giannis and Bam are going to be an interesting fit. And I think we're going to see what Coach Spoelstra is made of, because I think, I'm not going to sit here and say Eric Spoelstra is a bad coach, because I'd be a fool. But I mean, when you talk about a coach that has kept his job despite mediocrity, I mean, who other than Steve Kerr would still have their job? with the records that, and I understand that it hasn't been the strongest of rosters, of course. Again, I'm not saying Spoelstra's a bad coach, but he'll definitely have to prove himself worthy of
making that fit,
of that status of being one of the premier coaches in the league with that Giannis and Bam fit.
And
But
coming up with lineups with that team is going to be a nightmare. I think they're going to be going back and forth.
because if they don't get shooters and floor spacers, it's like you want to talk about a team like we talk about the new NBA where you score 120, 130 points a game. This Miami team is going to try to limit you to 90. With that defense, and they're not going to shoot a whole ton, and that was a huge drawback that we saw from Detroit, and that was why Detroit were frauds in the playoffs, was because they were among the bottom teams in the league in 3-pointers made, and like 3-and-D wings and players can't be overstated in today's NBA. You need it. You need shooting and you need defense.
It's also a balance though, because then you think about Boston, how they went out. They were truly just live by the 3, die by the 3, and it bit him in the ass. But what I was gonna pose a question. Bam obviously had his big scoring over 80 last year. If he's on the court in a game with Giannis, how close can he potentially even get to that 80-point mark? Because I don't think it's anywhere near.
I think you could score 40 maybe twice in a year with Giannis on the same team. But that game too was like an anomaly in itself.
Like free throws,
and the Wizards were like a complete shell of a basketball team in that game.
Very true. Yeah, that was like a fluke game for sure.
Yeah.
So all 3 selling on the Heat as contenders, but obviously there's a big offseason to go. Miami has plenty of more moves to make. And moving on to the next one, a topic that's been talked about in trade discussion, and we can talk about the Blazers link to the Celtics here in just a second, but buy or sell, Boston needs to trade and needs to move on from Jaylen Brown.
I'm buying it. I'm buying that they do need to move from Jaylen Brown. I think that there is some things going on in that locker room that are not favorable for a basketball team. The fact that we've heard so much from Jaylen and we haven't heard anything from Tatum is a little bit weird to me. I do trust Mazzulla in this situation. I do think he probably has a pretty tight grip on this team and he can do as much as he can. But I think the biggest reason why they have to move from him is there is just not space for the type of player that he is right now after what he was able to produce by himself. I think he finally got to see what he was capable of, and all of that is culminating into him truly wanting out. And I think that alone is enough for the Celtics to need to move from him.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I mean, I'm with you in the fact that I think they would benefit from moving him internally, and he'll benefit, not regardless, but depending on where he goes. But I'm going to sell on the idea that they need to trade him because we've seen what they can do with him. They won a championship.
I guess need is the key term.
No. But I think it will happen, and it should.
Yeah. Okay.
But that's kind of where I'm at.
And, you mentioned a trust in Mazzulla. I also trust Brad Stevens a whole lot and the front office. But I'm going to sell this with quickness. And the reason I say that is because Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown have shown what they can do together. But also, like, let's not sugarcoat it here as well. The Celtics have tremendous role players. Although Brown led them to a very high seed in the Eastern Conference, they have a lot around Brown as well, even when Tatum was out. And I feel as though the biggest thing for the Celtics and the biggest issue with Jaylen Brown is the 3 years, $183 million remaining, because that is a ton of money. And when you have Tatum making similar, it's very hard to add around your team. But, considering that they won the finals with, you could argue Jaylen Brown, wasn't this version that he was then. And, now you have Tatum coming back. I think there's no reason why they're not a top 4 seed together, even if they make no moves this offseason, but then giving themselves a chance to make some moves. And I really think in the playoffs, going to that sad for them Game 7 defeat against Philly, it was the biggest thing for me in that was there was no Anthony Simons. And the reason there was no Anthony Simons was because they traded him for Vucevic. But when you trade him for Vucevic to not play him at all in Game 7, you could have used the scoring of Simons, especially when Tatum wasn't able to play in that Game 7. Shockingly, that came out the day of that Game 7, and they only ended up losing by a couple buckets. So definitely selling Jaylen Brown, but also selling Jaylen Brown in the fact that, or selling they need to trade Jaylen Brown in the sense that where's the best package for him? Because when you look at it now that Portland just traded for Ja, if they're not in, I think Portland had the best package when it came to defense and possible draft picks. You could throw Charlotte in there as well, but it doesn't seem as though Charlotte's interested in big game hunting right now. It seems like they're going to do it soon, but not right now. So, when you look at Jaylen Brown being the best star available, I agree with that. But what other teams have the package to get him? Because if you're Boston, you want something that, yeah, sure, you want more flexibility getting off the salary and you want draft capital, sure, but you want somebody next to Tatum too. So for that reason, I'm going to sell. But moving on to our next one, should San Antonio trade De'Aaron Fox, buy or sell?
I'm buying. I'm good with Castle and Harper. They don't need him.
Yeah.
Straight up. Plus, I think there was one game in the finals where he hit like a clutch bucket or two, but outside that,
yeah.
I'm sure if I'm a San Antonio fan, I'm pretty ticked off with that situation. Plus, the hype around the two younger guys is awesome right now. So why not move him for anything else that's going to fit the team otherwise? So I'm buying that one.
Yeah, I'm pretty much right there. I wish I could find a neutral tone here. I don't know. I think there is a way that they can keep him and he can be successful. We talked about earlier, he's had no true playoff experience. So, and he was coming off an injury in that series. So you really don't know what was going on there. I do feel like we could see a better version of De'Aaron Fox, especially paired with a guy like Wemby. Like when that trade first happened, thinking about Wemby and De'Aaron Fox was like the sickest thing ever, in my opinion. Just because like a guy that can just bolt down the court, make passes, or score on his own and make that decision on his own. So I think that there's value there, but then you bring up the fact that they do have guys like Stephon Castle and Dylan Harper who showed up in the biggest series that you possibly could want them to. And so that's where I kind of lean both ways on it. I'm going to make a definitive decision and say I am going to sell the thought of selling De'Aaron Fox.
Interesting. Sure. Okay. For me, I'm buying. I've been a seller in this segment. I'm buying, and I'm buying as much of this take as I can because Dylan Harper was that impressive. He would there's no other way to put it. He was that impressive. And this is a rookie. I mean, and another thing too is they could possibly move Fox for someone who fits the roster a little bit better. And the reason they can do that is because I believe Wemby isn't supposed to be paid until 2 more years. I think Castle is 3 more years, and then Harper is 4 more years. So they can use that salary to maybe acquire a wing player who would fit a little bit better because I'm happy with Castle and Harper. For Castle, the turnover numbers need to come down.
I was just gonna, yeah.
And the 3-point shooting numbers need to go up. But other than that, I mean, Harper looks great. Harper looks like he's going to be just an incredible player in the future. I mean, we're talking about a guy with no playoff experience. At times, looked like he was the most experienced Spur in that.
More than Wemby, by far in some situations.
In the composure, yeah, absolutely. And you were talking about some cold buckets. I mean, enough can't be said for what Dylan Harper was doing on the floor over there. And so I think for that reason, I would be fine to move him if I'm San Antonio. Obviously, you want it to be the right thing, but there are plenty of other players out there who are making comparable to the money that Fox is. So to be able to pick up the phone and say, I have this huge salary piece that I don't necessarily need. And then also, if they were to move, and I'll throw out a player here, and it might be unlikely due to his desire to play with this franchise, but Kawhi Leonard is a player. Kawhi Leonard is a player who's only got 1 year left on his contract. So if they were to acquire Kawhi, and obviously this is a hypothetical, Kawhi's contract would run out, and then all of a sudden they get a good player for a championship run in one season, and then they have the money at their disposal to lock up all the guys that they want to. So part of it could be, I'm going full-fledged for one finals run 1 year, and then I'm locking down my guys, and I'm buying the fact that Wemby, Harper, and Castle can do it together in the future.
Yeah, and might be a smaller move. I think it would make sense, but just because we were talking about teams that need an offensive-minded guard, maybe a move with Miami, a smaller move over there would make sense potentially. Whether it's, I don't know, Portis. They definitely want to keep Wiggins.
I don't know that the finances would work for Miami to take on Bam. I don't know that to say that. However, that Fox had been linked to Miami before San Antonio.
Which would be a cool fit.
Yeah, yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, him running up and down the court with those two bigs.
Yeah,
pretty
for sure. Yeah. Moving on to, we've got two more buy or sells here. AJ DeBansa being the best player in the 2026 draft class. So you either buy that he's going to be the best player in this class, or you sell and you take the field, whether that's Peterson, whether that's Boozer.
And clarification is the career trajectory, not just who's best right now, correct?
Mm-hmm. Right. Best career from the 26 class.
I want to say I'm buying. It's really hard to say, though, because it's such a stacked draft. And, I mean, I could see Peterson balling out. They got a decent squad in Utah right now. It could be interesting.
They really do.
You could even go down the draft, though, and be like, I think LeBaron Philon could be the best player in this
I'm glad you said that.
It's just there's so many ancillary guys in this draft that are
Philon's a bucket.
Yeah.
With our situation in Philly, I think he's taken a little bit of a hit in terms of what he could do in the short term.
Yeah.
But he is nice.
Yeah. And
if he ramps up his defense like he had done his freshman year, then he's going to be a real good piece off the bench for us. I'm excited.
I just think there's pieces everywhere in this draft. I mean, Keaton Wagler too. I think there's a lot of guys that you can be high on. But at the end of the day, I think Devance's the best guy. I think it's just plain and simple like that.
He's like that.
Yeah, he really is. He's got the body for it. I think he's got the mindset for it.
Yeah,
he's just kind of one of those you just do not want to get in front of that guy.
I'm that guy.
Yeah.
To clarify, both of you are buying.
Yep.
Yes.
Interesting. So this time I will be the one going against the majority. I'm selling. I think, again, we mentioned all the talent in the rest of the class, and it's just shocking. You guys mentioned Philon. In the article that I wrote about Boozer being a top 3 steal, he was a top 3 steal for me as well, going all the way down to 22. I mean, we're talking about a guy who's a legit lottery pick and many other years. I mean, this 2026 class is so stacked, and for that reason, I have to take the field. My other steal from that article as well was Cameron Carr. I think he was mad disrespected going down that far. But again, if we're not talking DeBansa, you guys mentioned his mindset. What about the mindset of Cameron Boozer? I mean, Cameron Boozer is coming in ready to prove some people wrong at the 3 pick. I think it would be shocking in today's NBA for a lot of people to say a power forward is going to be the best player of the 2026 class. But again, Peterson, it's a guard-driven league. There's great guards in that whole lottery. I mean, 5 through 9 were just some really good guards, and then also you have Caleb Wilson, who's an X factor, if you will, at 4. So, and then you have some more experienced guys like Lindeborg in there. Obviously, I don't think he's going to be the best player in the class, but just looking at this class, I just see too much talent not to take the field.
It's the smart bet.
And Devance's going to be great. Don't get me wrong on that. But yeah, just so much talent in this class, and I'm interested to see where it ends up. And even Jaden Quaintance at 20. He was known to be this insane bounce guy.
I like the Tennessee guy too.
Nate Ament at 10.
He's talented.
Or at 13, it was Berries they took at 10. Yeah, definitely interesting for sure. And I think we're just going to see so much talent from this class. It's interesting. Debanza himself said, "I think you guys are going to talk about this class the way you guys talked about LeBron's class." Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't be shocked at all. And especially how players are developing just to be great. I think we will for sure be talking about it. But moving on to our last one, definitely an interesting one. We saw this report today: buy or sell Ben Simmons returning to the NBA.
I'll be the first one to say I'm selling on that. He can stick to fishing. I'm good on that.
Yeah,
I'll leave it at that too.
I'm gonna be right there with it. I mean, I think this is also a guy that just like his build, his style of player is kind of already extinct, in my opinion. Like, it's just not a guy that like I'd really want on my team or need on my team. Yes, he's big. He can't really shoot.
It's like a Julius Randle playing out a jumper.
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm just not super into him playing basketball in general.
Yeah.
So like you said, stick to fishing, stick to what you're good at. I keep having fun out there on the water. Yeah, I'm good with you being in the NBA.
I think I'm going to go against you guys again. I'm buying, and the reason
I gotta hear this.
the reason I'm buying. Okay, I understand this might be an unpopular opinion, unpopular take. Do I think he's gonna be a good NBA player? Debatable. Do I think he's going to be? Do I think he can come back to the league? Yes, and that's what I'm buying. And the reason I'm buying that here is we're still talking about somebody who's around 30 years old. The issue is the 3-point shooting. I mean, we're talking about an abysmal 3-point percentage. But if you're looking, and I believe it's around less than 15% for his career. But if we're talking about
That's shocking.
That's bad. That's bad for
As
sure.
a Sixers fan, no, it's not.
But if we're talking about a player who can add some playmaking, I mean, we just mentioned Miami, an assist guy for Miami. A point forward in a sense. Maybe a ball handler. I don't hate the idea. Obviously, really needs to develop the 3-point shot, really needs to work on the mental game. But again, if you take into consideration that his cost will be a minimum contract, then could he return to the league? Maybe. I mean, again, he's hovering around 30 years old, so maybe.
Right.
Do I think it's going to be a success story? That's a whole other question. But by him returning, yeah, I'll say yes. I'll buy.
Okay, in my defense, when we said returning, I had returning to Philly in my head, which I absolutely don't want and don't see happening because we don't need a guy like that. He said I would likely either go back to Philly or maybe Miami. To your point, Miami would make a little bit more sense on a minimum contract.
Okay.
I guess why not?
But so now you're buying.
So I'll buy on the return to the NBA.
Okay.
I'll flip flop.
So
But he's not coming to Philly.
I'll stay solid. I don't think he's coming back.
Interesting.
I think it's especially too because he really said he just wanted to be on those two teams, Philly and Miami. Like,
You're not in a position to be picky.
yeah, like
Fair.
yeah.
I guess you could say part of a factor is definitely how bad he wants to come back. Because if he's willing to take a prove it, a G League, or like I love basketball, I want to play versus I love fishing.
And he was like, I got a buzz from watching the playoffs. Like, are you going to be on a playoff team? Are you going to make the playoffs?
Well,
are you going to get that buzz again?
Well, I mean, more than half the league is a playoff team, and with the play-in, 2/3 of the league has potential. So
true.
That's fair. But moving on, I think we are going to finish up talking about some Jalen Duren speculation. Some things came out after Duren, his supposedly his contract talks with the Pistons didn't go quite where he wanted him to be, and supposedly he's meeting very soon with the Sacramento Kings when free agency opens. Thoughts on this?
I mean, I get it, chase your bag, but as a fan of the sport, I'd rather it be, I do really want to play for a winning team. He's already on one.
Especially how long Detroit was bad, if you will.
Right. Outside of the Sixers, that's one of the teams that like you kind of want to root for. I like Cade a lot, and I like Duren too. He kind of had a major dud throughout the offseason or the postseason, which kind of stinks. But yeah, I mean, shipping himself off to Sacramento sucks because they're not doing anything out there.
But for me, Jalen Duren, it's really interesting, and it kind of goes back to what we were talking about with 18 to 20 teams being pawns for 10 to 12 teams to play with. And the reason why he's going to Sacramento to have that meeting is because what other teams can offer him money like that. That's why he's demoted to that option. I heard he's going to have a call with Los Angeles, the Lakers. That would be an interesting option, but probably not going to make what he wants to make after they just signed Reeves to the max extension. But we have a stat on Duren, and in the playoffs was just a shell of himself. And the reason why Detroit's kind of screwed over in this scenario is because he was named to the All-NBA team. And when he was named to the All-NBA team, that comes with the potential of a huge increase in max contract negotiation talks. But the stat on Duren is he averaged 9.3 fewer points in the playoffs than he did in the regular season. And that was the biggest drop-off in an all-star season since Elgin Baylor in 1969. I mean, we're talking a historically bad drop-off. I mean, it got to the point where he was a little bit borderline unplayable. Like, I'm not going to say unplayable, but his minutes were down huge. Yeah. J.B. Bickerstaff was going with Paul Reed instead.
And Paul Reed was playing far better.
Exactly. And for that reason, I think Detroit would somewhat be okay with not having Duren back, but obviously if they could extend him at a cheap price, that's what they want to do, but it doesn't seem like that's the case.
I think it would be a big hole to fill if Duren was to leave. I think he was a huge part of that team and a big reason why they had 60-plus wins. Also, for Duren, man, I just that's why I'm like, I'd rather have him stay on a winning team where he could actually, produce than go to Sacramento and be in the doldrums of the NBA. And just dude, that is literal NBA prison.
And also that it's also a team that Duren himself helped build too. But also thinking about it from Detroit's perspective, I think Detroit needs to work on their identity, and the reason I say that is I think they play a J.B. Bickerstaff brand of basketball, and that's a good brand of basketball. But I think that's a good brand of regular season basketball. They don't shoot enough. They don't shoot near enough. Tobias Harris is a good shooter, but even he prefers the mid-range, prefers the post-ups, and then Duncan Robinson was their real three-point shooter. But you look at any other contender, they've got three-point shooters crazy.
I mean, they're kind of trying to work on that already. They picked up Isaiah Joe. They still have Duncan Robinson. I'm trying to think. There might be a third guy.
They're interested in both Tyler Hero and we're interested in Kobe White before he re-signed in Charlotte. And then another factor in the Duren thing was that, again, we talk about 10 to 12 teams competing, the rest being pawns, if you say, or if you will. Isaiah Stewart was traded for nothing.
To the Grizzlies?
Yeah, no,
correct.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you can't re-sign Duren, and you say to yourself, I would have rather kept Stewart.
Yeah, that's
so. And then you can run B-ball Paul and Stu, and that's just those two guys you do not want to play against all day.
And again, it's worth keeping in mind that Detroit will ultimately be able to retain him no matter what, because he's a restricted free agent, meaning no matter what he signs, they can bite the bullet and say, shoot, this is way more than I wanted to pay you. I will keep you. So they can still keep him. Mm-hmm. However, I wouldn't want to sign him to a max deal after what we saw in the playoffs. I mean, again, talking about three-point shooting, talking about defense is okay. I mean, he's a bruiser, but can't stretch the floor that much. And then just there's more defensive versatility with Reed, like you mentioned, who can switch on to other positions better. So I think it's a very precarious situation to be in, and I think I think this situation doesn't happen at all if Duren doesn't make All-NBA.
Because now he's looking for his bag. Now he's he's got the check mark next to that All-NBA spot.
Got the resume for a big bag.
Yeah, I mean, when my resume gets better, I go apply for other jobs like that. Right. That's just the way it is.
Well, another part of it too is, I mean, you can bring the parallels to real life from to the NBA is that when you're younger, you want to grind and get your bag, and you see a lot of players who they want to grind, get their bag, and then all of a sudden the second half of their career comes and it's all about winning.
Yeah.
So that could very well be Duren here, but we'll have to see what it looks like moving forward. Thank you again for listening to the Basketballtist podcast with me, Mack Baltes. Again, all of our links will be in the description. I am Mack Baltes, writer for USA Today. If you want to check out some of my articles, I was alongside here in this episode with Connor Murray and Eli Fox. Some of their links will be in the description as well. Feel free to check it out. Thank you so much. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and be ready and be tuned in for future episodes.